Hi students, topic of today's lecture influenza, Department of Infection Diseases. Definition: the term influenza appeared thanks to astrologers in Italian sotto l'influenza delle stelle means under the influence of stars. It is for the first time applied in Italy in 1358 and meant a disease under influence of stars of cold water. Influence history. It was for the first time described by Hippocrates in the 5th century. The uh, earliest mention appeared in 1170 in English chronicles. The term influenza was borrowed by British during epidemic of 1782. The name of a disease in Russian, grippe, is borrowed from French grippe. Influenza virus genome the segmented one-chained RNA of negative polarity. Influenza virus under an electron microscope. The sporting influenza virus under the electron microscope. Classification: ABC types: A. People, birds, pigs and horses. C. Mammals. B. Only people. C. People and pigs. Identification on influenza virus. Type A. Application Palace, Hong Kong. Strain number 3. Allocation year 68. Distribution of antigens H1N1. Influenza A causes epidemic and pandemic. 3-5 million causes of a serious illness annually. The influenza A subtypes differed on a combination of two superficial glycoproteins, hemagglutinin 16 types, neuraminidase 9 types. All substrates of a virus circulate among wild birds. People are strict. Only H1N1, H1N2, H3N3 circulate among people now. Influenza B and C. Influenza B can cause epidemic but less serious than influenza A. Serious flashes age 2-3 years. It didn't cause pandemic. Influenza C proceeds more easily, doesn't cause epidemic and the pandemic. Antigens changes constantly happen in group like A and to a lesser extent in group like B, while the type C is antigenically stable. Ways of transmission of seasonal influenza. Direct infection with an aerosol, mucous respiratory tracts, throat, sneezing, cough. The immediate becoming infected throat contaminated subjects, people, arms with the subsequent contact entering of a virus in the nose and the eyes. Pathogenesis number 1. The virus of influenza is transmitted from the person to the person in the airborne of contact way through the infected arms of surface. Cells of a respiratory epithelium are infected in case particles of a virus aren't neutralized by immunoglobulin and or non-specific inhibitors in mucus allocations. Uh, Pathogenesis 2. The incubation period fluctuates from 1 to 4 days, depending of the size of a virus does and the immune status of the owner. Spread of a virus begins the day before implication of symptoms reaches peak in 24 hours, remains higher 1 2 days and then decreases during the next 5 days. As a rule, convalescence comes approximately in a week, but serious complication and a lethal outcome can develop. The virulent virus very seldom manages to be obliged from a blood. Pathogenesis number 3. Mm, Convalescence comes due to effect of interferon. Interferon is found in allocations of respiratory organs approximately every other day after the beginning of spread of a virus. Specific antibodies and the cellular mediated answer are found within the next 1 2 weeks. Pathogenesis 4. Epidemiological aspects. During the periods between pandemic, flash can have an appearance of gradual process of has flare character when there is a close contact between as acquisitive people. Children, especially preschool and inclined to transfer the serious forms and the extent of distribution among them the highest. During epidemic, children of school age are infection carriers at early stage with the subsequent transfer to adults and preschool children on later stages. In large establishments of campuses, the duration of flash lasts from 2 to 6 weeks. Ways of transmission. It is considered that transfer from the person to the person happens by means of several mechanisms. The small drop are aerosols formed at conversation, tissues of sneezing, symptoms of influenza without complications. Symptoms appear acutely and include chill, headache, dry cough, nose congestions, sore throat, hoarseness, irritation in the throat, which high temperature follows, and once general arch pain in muscles, joints, malaise, weakness, appetite loss, temperature still usually to 3 or 5 days, as well as all other symptoms. Respiratory symptoms usually last 3 4 more days. The gout and the weakness can stick to 4 weeks after return in the main symptoms. Comparison of symptoms of influenza A, B, and C without complication. Symptoms type A, type B, type C: myalgia, arthralgia, headache, chill, rhinorrhea, cough, sore throat, gastrointestinal implication. Uh, Gastrointestinal implication type B increases in young children, especially diarrhea. Possible complication of a virus of influenza A and B: pneumonia, myocarditis, pericarditis, meningitis, encephalitis. Pneumonia, Rare syndrome, immunity long and specific. Development of an antibody against HA and NA play an important role while antibodies against all other proteins coded by a virus are unprotective. Fastness to infection belongs to antibodies against HA will to be transferred. Decrease of disease severity and the decline in the ability in the contact way is bound to antibodies against NA. Cross protection, cellular immunity, seasonal influenza case rate, flu highly contagious. 20% of the population gets seasonal influenza annually. 13% of the diseased are hospitalized. Young, elderly, and chronic patients groups of risk. The expressed economic losses, disability, case rate, mortality, medical expenses, the reset load, and the health system. Antiviral drugs, protein M2 inhibitors, neuraminidase inhibitors, antiviral therapy of influenza, acetaminophen, zanamivir, piramivir, anatidin, rimantadine. Laboratory diagnostic, elimination and identification of a virus, serology, polymerase chain reaction. Elimination of a virus. The growth of the virus in embryonic eggs. Sampling material for research without wash out from a nose, discharge from a nose, nasopharyngeal smear from a nose, smear from a throat. The collecting of material from a respiratory tract. Sensitivity of research depends on type and the quality of the taken away material. Early terms, material intake, transpiration in laboratory at the necessary conditions. Taking of a nasopharyngeal smear. Material taking. Transpiration of laboratory samples. Identification of virus. Serological diagnosis. The serological diagnosis tests used for round diagnosis are based on a inhibition of a hemagglutination and immunofluorescence (IFA) and the express tests. Hemagglutination reaction. Seasonal influenza prevention and control. Pharmaceutical measures, vaccine, the best prophylaxis for today. Efficiency depends on structure and the circulation strain. Expensive, need of an annual choice of vaccine strains. Antiviral preparations, not pharmaceutical, to avoid contact to patients, to use smears. Vaccine against seasonal influenza of people. Problems of an epidemiological surveillance of actual respiratory diseases, influenza-like diseases. Presumable case, the actual diseases with increased body temperature to 38 and more, cold or sore throat in the absence of other diagnosis. Probable case, it is possible in case of extent of clinical implication of a presumable case and existence of contact to the confirmed case of influenza or other influenza-like diseases. Bird influenza virus, bird influenza at people, years, subtype, location, cases, mortality, epidemiology, transmission of infection, episodology, implication of bird influenza at birds, actions, vaccination, ways of transmission, indirect contact, the infected material surface, infection from the sick person is extremely rare, the using in nutrition, cut, crude, or half-baked flu, eggs, and blood. Clinical symptoms, incubation period of 2 8 days, till 17 days. Initial symptoms, high temperature, usually higher than 38, with influenza-like symptoms, vomiting, abdominal pains, chest pain, nasal and gingival bleedings, pneumonia, sputum with the blood, the complicated respiration, crepitation on an inspiration, other symptoms, watery chair, multi-organ lesion, kidneys, heart. Difference of bird influenza from seasonal influenza. Symptoms and the things. Complication. Seasonal influenza at its sinusitis, bronchitis, bronchiolitis, pneumonia, virus and bacterial, exacerbation of chronic diseases, lessons of muscles, lesson of the central nervous system, bird influenza, always pneumonia develops acute respiratory distress syndrome, multi-organ lessons, encephalitis. Presumable case, probable case definition, probable case definition 2, influenza H1N1, swine flu. Ways of transmission, the airborne, the contact, the nutritional way isn't present. Epidemiology, people of active age are ill. The majority has the contact to pigs. Level of lethality differs over the countries. The people visiting Mexico are ill. Clinical symptoms of influenza H1N1. H1N1. Standard definition of a case of influenza of A. Material CDC. Probable case compliance to a presumable case and the confirmation of a virus, a flu A, but polymerase chain reaction on H1 and H1 and H3 is negative. Standard definition of a case of influenza A. Treatment: acyltamivir, Tamiflu, 75 milligram 2 times per day, 5 days. In hard cases to 300 milligram per day. Chain of treatment. Propose only acyltamivir for prevention. Thank you. Development.